to this association. Thank you.
Thank you everybody for coming. So before we begin, I just want to say a word or two. As most of you know, my name is Audrey Adacco. I am the outgoing president of the Criminal Defense Association. I want to make sure that we take a second to thank Dean Ferguson for all of the events and the tireless work she's done. On behalf of CDA, I think I can confidently say that our expungement fair wouldn't have been anywhere near the success it was without her constant guidance and help, beyond just everything else that she does. And that thank you needs to also extend to our faculty advisor, Catherine Grasso in the back. Her quiet help with the expungement fair made it so that we could pay for every single applicant's expungement process. And I think that that deserves a round of applause in its own for both of them. So without further ado, we will begin. So like I said, my name's Audrey Adacco, but we can start down the line if that's all right. And if you could just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Hi everybody, can you hear me okay? Okay. My name is Pete Martell. I'm the Associate Director for the American Friends Service Committee down in Ypsilanti, Michigan. We work with people who are currently incarcerated, and a project that I'm presently working on and have been since last summer is a commutation project dedicated specifically to women who are serving long and life sentences in Michigan. So a little bit about employment. Formerly incarcerated, I served time here in Michigan from 1994 through 2008. Graduated Wayne Law 2016 and had a short stint on the Michigan Supreme Court as a clerk. Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
I am Dan Manville. I am the Director Emeritus of the Civil Rights Clinic. Okay, so I have 42 days before retirement, so that's why I'm sitting here. Okay, and like everybody here, I'm an ex-offender. Had issues getting admitted to the bar, and some other people have too, but we keep fighting. And we keep, working to assist those who are coming out of prison after us.
Hello, I am Rwanda Hollister, and I am also formerly incarcerated. I went in as a juvenile offender, and I returned when I was 52. So I spent 38 years in prison. And since I've been home, I have been advocating for the people whom I left behind. So I'm learning this as I go along, because technology was something that they did not have when I went in. And so now I'm out and I'm back, and I'm learning as I go along. And I work for and with American Friends Service Committee, as well as Nation Outside, which is what I do. And I also own the Chow Hall, which is a cuisine which we prepared on the inside of the prison, because that's where we ate, in the Chow Hall. So I brought those recipes out here, and I do that as part of my avocation work. And that's just all.
Yeah, now that I know that's chow food, I'll be a good son. So, my name is Gregory Wines. I actually am going through some of the same struggles as Lawanda here. I just got out last year. I was incarcerated in 1993, and I just got out last year, so almost 29 years. I was a juvenile offender as well. I was sentenced to life without parole and 2 parolable life sentences. I was sentenced to die in prison. And I fought in the judicial system once the laws were flipped for juveniles, and my case was decided, and I went back and I was resentenced the first time. I fought for another 5 years just to get a sentence that would actually release me, one that some lawyers and judicial advocates would consider equitable. One of the things that I've done since I've gotten out is volunteer with Nation Outside. I work closely with them. I also have begun to develop and enhance my rehabilitation program, which I developed in prison stands for responsibility, accountability, remorse, and empathy. I'm also reaching out, or actually I was contacted recently by the Michigan Department of Corrections to participate in a program with them, a peer mentorship program for prisoners when they get out, because as Ms. Harris just said, technology is tough. A quick little story, when I got out, the first thing I asked my wife was, where's the door handle on the car? I didn't know how to open the car. It's, you know, it's funny, but it's true, you know? So, I mean, I realize all the struggles that we as ex-prisoners face, and the things that many people who have never experienced that will understand. So, you know, I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know you sort of touched on it a little bit, all of you, but if you feel comfortable or would like to expand, what was your first experience with the justice system?
My memory's
You
not that
remember?
good.
Yeah, you remember.
Geez, I don't really know. I mean, I was arrested a couple times in my teens for minor in possession or playing music too loud, and that was like kind of like the start of this adverse relationship with police. But I was locked up in '94. It was an armed robbery for a convenience store. We'd stolen the pickup truck, robbed a convenience store, and then as we were getting away to get back to our truck, police started following us, and I shot at the police. Nobody was hurt, but it was a big deal, clearly, right? Ended up going to prison for that. I think it was 20.
Way back in 72, this one summer, I was being arrested for buying beer for friends, having drugs on me, and all these were misdemeanors. And I represented myself, pro se. And since then, I've been doing law, okay? And in '73, some friends of mine got ripped off for a bunch of coke and money, and I basically played a hitman, and we went up to recover the money, and in the process, in the coke, but I knew none of that would still exist, and somebody died, and then I got sentenced to 4.5 to 15 years, and my two co-defendants got sentenced of 3.5 to 15 because I told the court and the prosecutor that I was responsible for everything. And after getting out of prison, it took me 5 years to get admitted to Antioch Law School in Washington, D.C. And it took me 6 years to get admitted to practice law. And since then, I've done nothing but prison litigation. So going on 40-some plus years of doing prison litigation. And I write litigation manuals for prisoners. The most recent one is 940 pages. The next one is going to be about 1,300 pages. So that's what I do with my spare time.
I would say my first run-in with the law, I was about 8 or 9. I was taken in for questioning for an incident, and it didn't sit well with me the way that, you know, just like, what is it, Law and Order, the big light over you and they're asking you questions. And so that was my very first, which kind of made me like look at the police like, y'all ain't right. But later at 17, and when I really had the actual run-in with the police, I was involved with a young man, and he was involved with another young lady. And I'm actually from Chicago, and I had came down here to Michigan to be with him, and I dare you try to take my boyfriend. So we need to talk about this. So the talking became a yelling match. The yelling match became a fight, and both of us lost in the end. And I was sentenced to 40 to 60 years in prison. Yes.
Well, my first, if we go back, my first experience was actually nothing. It was minor. I stole a carton of cigarettes. Obviously didn't get away with it, but that the only experience I have with the justice system until I committed the crimes that I was sentenced for in 1993, and that was really a big eye opener because the victim in my case actually worked for the court system, and I actually ended up down in you're probably familiar with this, Waukegan, Illinois, and I was extradited back to Michigan. Well, on my way back to Michigan, the officers that picked me up, and I'm not from Michigan. I came to Michigan 6 months before committing my crime. Okay. I came from Southern California, and I committed my crime 6 months later. So I found myself down in Waukegan, and eventually I was transported to Cook County Jail, and I was extradited back from there. Well, when Michigan came to pick me up, I was happy to see him because I come back to Michigan and get things straightened out. You know, I didn't shoot anybody. You know, I was just with the guy that did somebody. Of course, I was justifying, minimizing, and doing everything the typical criminal offender does. And they didn't want to hear any of it. I was a cop killer, according to them. And that's how they treated me. As soon as we took steps outside of that jail, as soon as they could, they stepped right between the shackles on my feet and let me fall forward until those things bit into my legs. They put my restraints on me so tight, my wrists were bleeding. That was my first experience with the judicial system, with the justice system, with officers. My grandmother always taught me, oh, they're good. They're there to, do the right thing. That's what I relied on. That's what I remember. I remember her telling me they're good. So when I'm telling these, these police officers, hey, look, I'm glad you guys are here. We can go back to Michigan and get this straightened out. They didn't want to hear any of that.
Thank you. So in line with the theme of Diversity Week, in his letter from a Birmingham jail, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King wrote, we quote, "We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." How can you relate this quote to your current work with the justice system?
That's a great quote. Since I started working at American Friends Service Committee back originally in 2010, I was from 2010 to 2016. Went to work for the state for a bit, and I'm back here for about a year. But since I started working at AFSC, we've made it like a yearly practice on Dr. King's birthday to get together and drink a little bit and to read his letter together and discuss it in that meeting. And there's so many points throughout it that are just worth pondering on for a long, long time and thinking about. But so this kind of quote makes me think about just like the interconnectedness of all of us as a society. I'm a PhD student at U of M in sociology department, so we're always like trying to figure out how things interact with each other and how these relationships work and how society functions as an organism, and especially like over time, temporally. And I think in all of this that we're living in whatever time that we're living in, like we're dealing with decisions that were made long before we were here, and decisions that we make now will have effects on people long time after we're gone. But certainly while we are here and we have this limited set of like curbs that we have to make our decisions in, those decisions are all affecting one another somehow, whether directly or indirectly. So I guess just kind of like the practice that I take is I try to do well, and I try to be thoughtful about like every decision that I make, like how is this going to affect others, without becoming absolutely paralyzed in thought and no action, right? So yeah, I try to do good and help people and understand there are serious power structure imbalances, largely because of the legal system, right? But there's really big power imbalances that we have to live with, that we make our decisions in, and like, who do we want to help, and whose problems are maybe like totally legit from where they're coming from, but they're not struggling for housing or food or dignity.
When I first got out of prison in '76, I tried to set up organizations. And if you look back at that time period, few existed, and it was almost impossible to set up any type of really groups to assist prisoners. But knowing the way I was, I never quit, I just kept pushing. And it's like getting in law school. It took me 5 years to get into law school. Nobody would accept me because of my felony conviction. And then eventually Antioch Law School in Washington DC accepted me. It was one of the big pro bono law school, and after your first semester then you did clinic. And as I went on, I got involved in doing a national publication called Prison Legal News back then. And this was sent into prisons, and it was really written for them and other people doing, wanting to assist prisoners. The thing was that there was very little out there during this whole time period, and I finally got admitted in 1988 and moved back to Michigan. And I started doing criminal law, and I took 1 or 2 prison cases in federal courts. The next thing I know, I'm invited over to meet with all the judges over there, wanting to know who I was and how I could help them and how they could help me. So I basically switched all my work over to prisoners' rights because I thought that I could impact more people by doing that, and also by writing manuals. So since about 1994, I've written a number of manuals, and the Prisoner Self-Help Litigation Manual, which is being updated now, and will be about 1,300 pages. The last one we wrote was 940 pages. And in regards to Dr. King, I felt that by doing this, I could really help people and spread the word. Because the manual is sold to prison law libraries, and most places do have it. And we've been quoted in a couple of court decisions as a Bible for prisoners' rights. And sorry, but I'm not religious, but yeah, I'll take that comment from a federal judge. But if you're going to do something like this, you cannot do it by yourself. You need the assistance of others. And I started teaching the clinic, and I felt that was a big step forward in regards to assisting. Because what we do for one will impact on others. If we can win in a court, Department of Correction always thinks that they're going to have 100 lawsuits filed tomorrow, and it's never happened. Okay, but it kind of puts some restraints on them. So by helping others, we can spread that help out. And my law students, I started at Wayne in a clinic program for 6 years, Denver Law School as a visiting professor for a year with Supermax out there, with all the people that were classified as terrorists by the federal government, and then here for 13 years, and 2 of my favorite students are here. And we gotta say this about Bria Lassiter. She argued twice in the 6th Circuit Federal Court of Appeals in the last 6 weeks. And I think and I think we're gonna win both of them. And both of them will impact on the system, and that's a good way to go out for me.
Well, I kind of take this personally, that basically everything I do directly impacts someone else. I committed a crime, direct impact. And now that I have received a second chance, I'm out here. And for me, I wasn't let out because of special behavior, even though I was a juvenile offender. Everything for me with the legal system always caught on the line. I couldn't do this because, I couldn't do this because I couldn't be released with the juvenile offenders because I didn't have that particular sentence. There was always something. So I actually served the sentence in which I was given. I was not released early or anything. And still, to me, this is a second chance because I could have received a sentence that I'd still be in. So anyway, with that second chance, everything that I do is to move me forward as not to embarrass my victims who did not deserve what they got. So I always consider them in everything I do, which drips down into, while I was incarcerated, I went to school and I went to Spring Arbor University, and I got my associate's degree, one class short of my bachelor's degree. And once I was released, I now attend Eastern and received my bachelor's degree in business. So if I go to class and I don't do, or if there's a bad look, then that's not just on me. It's on all the people who come behind me. Oh, see, I told y'all they couldn't do it. Because now I have a special stigma. It ain't special, but I have a stigma that with the incarceration, that I'm looked upon differently than regular everyday people. So I have to be extremely careful in everything that I do because I'm female, I'm black, I'm a, what am I? A felon. I'm a felon, and all these different things, they like to label people. So I have to fight for each one of those labels.
I stand up. My back, yeah, I hate to break the mold, but my back's not feeling very good, and I'm very uncomfortable just sitting in a chair, so I'm better standing up in front of groups, especially large groups like this. So I'm glad to go last because I get to pick up a little information for everybody too. Thanks, appreciate you guys. So, real.
Yes, later.
Yeah, I got you. My brother's taking me out to lunch, so I'm jealous. Real quickly before I even get into this, Mr. Manville, your work on prisoner self-help litigation manual. He's right. His works are notorious in prison. I had a copy of his manual. Highlighted it so much that the highlighter wore out. The pages started falling out of the book. I mean, it's a resource that countless prisoners have not only used but valued. You know, and despite our fights and efforts in the courts, and sometimes them shooting us down or what have you, we still rely on your work. So what you do in your spare time means the world to those of us that have been incarcerated. Thank you. And the quote in particular, there's a portion of it sits well with me. It says, whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. And there's three quick things I want to touch on. And Audrey, I'm going to try and make it quick so I don't want to move along. But one is something I'd never really considered. When I went back in 2016, kind of like Ms. Herrick, I had to fight because I went back in 2016 and everybody told me, oh, you're not going to get a bad sentence. The sentencing scheme essentially was a 40 to 60 year sentence or life without parole. Everybody said, nah, Greg, you've been doing great. You're not gonna get 40, 60, you're probably gonna get 20, 30, maybe 32. And there was no good time at this time. So whatever time you were gonna get was gonna be flat. You were gonna serve. Well, I go back and I happen to have the privilege of having my sitting judge. My sitting judge believed that the United States Supreme Court got it wrong. What do you guys think he gave me?
Life.
He can't give me life.
40, 60.
He gave me 40 to 60. And he left my parole life sentences alone. Left them intact. I came back to the prison system devastated. I mean, because this was my shot. This was my chance to get out of prison. And now I still have 2 parole life sentences and a 40-year sentence to serve. So now I had, a couple of decisions to make. I could either keep moving forward, or I could just say, you know what, I'm just gonna do what I want to do in prison, go back to the old me. You know, and with the encouragement of someone I call my brother today, you know, I actually kept going. I kept moving forward. And it was hard, man. It was an uphill battle. I fought for 5 years, 5 more years. Longer than most of you who've been in college. 5 more years to get this overturned. And with the help of my attorney, Chip Chamberlain, he represented me pro bono. And we fought. And in 2018, the Michigan Court of Appeals, they reversed my case. Part of it. They reversed the 40 to 60. They said, you know what? And when you take a former juvenile lifer who's not serving life without parole anymore, and it's a term of years, you've got to consider youth. It has to be considered. And they took old cases, Snow, Milborn, so on and so forth, and they applied them to this new ruling. My case became new law in the state of Michigan. How do you think the prosecutor felt about that? Man, he was hot and mad. This guy just, he would not quit. I mean, I was like his new worst enemy. And my attorney, who was like, hey, I don't know why this guy won't work with you. Well, Chip, what do you think? I mean, you just made this guy a super enemy because you made law and he doesn't want to follow it.
Right.
So Chip's confused. I'm trying to explain, but this guy's not your friend, Chip. So we end up battling it out. He ends up appealing the Michigan Court of Appeals ruling. And again, once again, with the help of my brother, he encouraged me, file a cross appeal. Because my trial judge said, you know what, I'm gonna leave your life without parole sentences in place. And so we said, you know what, we think we're right. We filed that cross appeal. Goes to the Michigan Supreme Court, waited another, I don't know, it's a couple year or two. Michigan Supreme Court finally comes down and says, you know what, you were right on all accounts. Now this whole time, I'm upset, I'm mad, because I'm seeing all these juvenile lifers getting out. One after another. What about me? What about me? And I'm like, and here's my case. You know, all these juvenile lifers are using my case. I'm like, what about me? So my case indirectly impacted others, and it's going to continue to impact others. It's going to impact, I hate to say it, Ms. Harris, but others that followed in your footsteps, because now they can use that when they're sentenced to a term of years. They can use elements of that case to their advantage so they don't receive such a high sentence. So indirectly, once again, whatever affects one, affects all indirectly. Another thing I wanted to talk about real quickly was Nation Outside, policy reform. Okay? Some of you probably have never had a run-in with the law, but a lot of you probably have a family member that has had a run-in with the law. You have a family member that's impacted by policy and reform. That's what Nation Outside is all about. They're all about changing those policies and making the reforms so that your loved one, your cousin, your aunt, your uncle, whoever it is, that had a run-in with the law and was treated unfairly, that they're not treated unfairly. And that way the next person gets a fair shot. Because that's what our system is supposed to be about. It's not guilty until proven innocent. It's innocent until proven guilty. We've gotten that really messed up over the years. And Nation Outside and other groups are here to fix that. The last thing I want to talk about in particular was the RARE program. Okay, because one of the reasons I developed that program while I was inside was because I started asking myself, you know, and Mr. Martell, you can actually help me out with this statistics. I believe about 90% of the prison population are going to return to society. Is that correct?
No.
Is it higher?
So that's always what we've used in the reform scheme, where we say, well, you need to be concerned about who's in prison because they're gonna come out and be your neighbor. But in Michigan right now, our population's gone from 51,000 in 2007 down to 32,000 right now. Half of that population is either serving life or long indeterminates with 15-year mins. So our real problem in Michigan is there's so many people that are gonna die in prison.
Okay. So the ones that are being released, okay, the ones that are being released actually have a date, okay? Essentially, if you have a minimum term of years, you're more likely going to get out.
If it's not a 60 to 90.
Yeah, exactly. If it's not a ridiculous sentence. If you have a sentence of 10, 20 years, okay, they're gonna be coming back out. And where are they gonna be living? Where are they gonna be living, guys? Next to you, next to you, next to you. They're gonna be living in your guys' neighborhoods. So do you want someone who's just been sitting in prison, not concerned about where they messed up, you know, what they're accountable for, having zero remorse, not understanding empathy for you, your loved ones, your family. Would you rather that, or would you rather someone who sat in prison and decided to take programs that help them better understand why they were irresponsible, what they're accountable for, what they're remorseful for, why they should be remorseful, and having empathy towards society and their neighbors? Again, the reason for the development of this type of program and many programs in the system is because what affects one directly affects all. Because it's going to impact you in one way or another. People are going to get out. And depending on what they're doing in there, it's going to impact you. We just want to try and make them better people, like we've had the opportunity to become better people. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Hollister. I am a Hollister. I'm Hollister. He done called me Harris 3 times. Okay. Yeah. I am Jack.
Perfect segue. That's a perfect segue into our next question. So I believe the last time I checked the statistics, it was about 2.8 million individuals facing some form of supervision, incarceration within this country. And like Peter said, about 32,000 now in the state of Michigan. And the work that all of you do is tremendous to help those that are currently inside, but those who are also coming home. So when you are assisting these individuals, whether currently or formerly incarcerated, being released from incarceration, in your opinion, what tends to be the area in which they face the greatest challenge?
Can I pick two?
Sure.
Housing and technology. Because I work specifically mostly with people who have served long sentences, who have maybe been locked up so long, they were locked up before Windows 95 came out. So technology, but otherwise across the board housing, because of your felony conviction, and also because even if you've been out long enough, credit history. If you have no credit history, you just haven't been racking up the numbers for that, you won't be able to rent.
I would add housing, because that's a big thing. If you don't have resources when you leave the prison system, what is it, $75? No.
Not no more.
No.
You get nothing.
Nothing.
Except for
Nothing?
what you got.
If you
Your account.
discharge, after your max sentence, then I think they give you a bus ticket wherever you wanna go.
Yeah.
That's just all.
Okay, what about Cowboys?
Yeah.
Okay, but, yeah, the department, like they said that stuff, they used to get, it was $35 way back in the 80s, now it was up to $75. And you take that away and you've been in prison as long as the people here, I mean, you generally have no savings, no money when you leave. So if you leave in the middle of winter, what can you really do? Even if you leave in the summer, there's no way that you have the resources to get a place to stay, so you become homeless. You start finding an alley or someplace like that to live. So how do you really develop yourself so that you can be successful if MDOC is not providing the resources? I read this, I think it was this last week, where the MDOC and the state has agreed that in prisoner ID, when they come out, now can be used as identification to show who you are. Prior to that, they could not use a prison identification. When they got out, when they went to get a driver's license, you had no ID. Because when you go in prison, I mean, let me stop at my, apartment so I get my ID, my social security card, my birth certificate. You don't have that when you go in. And when they first started this, some rehabilitation programs, I think it was in about 92, 93. One of the things that I suggested and I was on the Department of Corrections board for 2 years, and I never got appointed again. And my suggestion was, recognize the prison ID so that they can get these other documents they need so that they have a chance to be successful. And now, what is it, 20 years later, they're finally getting around to it? It's just crazy. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff, but it is jobs. I mean, look at I went to Denver to become visiting professor out there. And, well, let me take that back. I applied in Alaska to go up there and work for the ACLU and be their legal director. I checked apartments up there, and they wanted me to list my convictions. And since I was convicted, I could not rent in Alaska. I could not rent an apartment. But yet I was gonna be legal director for the ACLU. I don't think anybody in Alaska liked the ACLU.
Well, I came home May 8, 2020. And yes, they are now allowing us to bring our prison identification home to be used. And I tried to get into the strip club with it. And they were like, absolutely not. I'm like, well, this is all I got, it's a strip club. You know, we came down here for the lamb, I'm here for the lamb chops, actually. But it's like, no, I'm like, you can look at me and see I'm over 21. No. It's so, the ID is out. And I always tell people, which I wanna make a point to something that he said. There are only two things that can happen when you go to prison. One is you're either gonna die in prison or you're gonna get out. Those are only two things that can happen. There's nothing else. What happens in between is you want that person to be able to adjust to society when they come home. Because it's the cause and effect, if not. Because I'm going to eat. I am not going to go hungry. And if I can't get a job, if I don't know how to work the phone, then what are you expecting me to do? What do you think I should be doing? I'm just gonna go hungry? That's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. So, when I came, I didn't know how to use the stove. It started ticking, I'm like, woo, I'm about to blow up the whole block. So, there are little things, cause people like, oh, if you do the crime, you have to do the time. Well, I did mine. I did what the state required of me. And now, I'm next door to you. I'm about to blow your house up. Yeah, just cause of the stove. I came out, they got me a nice little fancy phone. I had a nervous breakdown because you got to push the buttons to unlock it to call. I couldn't call nobody. I'm in an apartment by myself. I'm like, I'm about to break the phone and I'm like, I can't call anybody. I'm like crying hysterically. I can't call anybody. And then
During the quarantine.
Yes, there's nobody on the street. Like I got out May 8th. We're like driving, there's nobody out there. I'm like, ooh, these streets are clean. And so it's like, where's everybody at? It's like, yeah, they don't want no call. Don't cough by me. You better get away from me. So we're like, we want to be accepted back, we want to do right and walk, you know, but there are things we need to learn. And all the time, we don't know what it is we need to know. I didn't know I was gonna need to learn how to do a phone. And my parole agent, and then I'm gonna stop because I feel like I've answered the question. My parole agent, she was very mean. She said, I need to do a Zoom call with you. I had been out like 2 days. I had to call on the first day I was home and we talked on the phone. Then she said, I need to do a Zoom call with you. Hey, well, what's a Zoom call? And she said, it's on your phone, it's an app. I can't, okay. All right then, I got you. So, I'm like, it's on the phone, so I'm looking, Zoom, no Zoom on here, no Zoom. So I'm like, hey, I need a Zoom. The lady is talking, and I'm like, I can't get it. I can't get it. And I'm like, can I just come to the office? Let me just, please, I'll just catch the bus, let me come to the office. She's like, no, you cannot come to the office, you will figure it out. And I'm like, okay. So I got on the bus, caught the bus to the phone store. Now this is an Apple, and I had whatever with the highest number in 2020. So what was that? We were at 13. So y'all know this is like $1,200. So I caught the bus to the store. I'm like, I need a phone that has Zoom on it. And they're like, okay. Sold me another phone. Sold me another phone and put Zoom on it.
Oh, yeah. And it ain't just the phone.
Yeah.
We can talk about the car, we can talk about like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so the answer to the question is, we don't know what it is we need when we're coming out, because we haven't been out here. I wasn't out here for 36 years. So I don't know what I need. I didn't know how to drive when I went in. And somebody donated a car, it was a stick shift, not about to learn how to drive that, and y'all just taught me how to do the manual. So I took the stick shift, traded it in. The lady not only sold me a lemon, but she sold me a sour lemon. So like turning the corner out the lot, when they say, once you buy it out the lot, the transmission, it was over. So now I'm paying like $15,000 for a $5,000 car.
At
So
26% interest.
yeah, and I was like happy, okay, I don't wanna just keep telling my story, but y'all done got me going. So, like, when I came out, the credit thing, one of the first things you learn in prison is do not loan and borrow. That's one of the first things, do not loan and borrow, and don't tell everything you know. So, ain't no loaning and borrowing. So when I got out, I'm like, I got zero credit history. They're like, okay. I'm like, no, I got zero. I don't owe anybody anything. Nobody owes me. I'm at zero. I'm happy with zero. I'm like, I got zero. I got zero. They're like, stop telling people that. I'm like, I'm at zero. They're like, no, you need to get a credit card. Or I'm not getting a credit card where I'll be owing people. You need a bank card. I'm not doing none of that. Just give me a check, I'll cash it, and I'll pay what I have to pay. I stayed at, I just got a credit card at the, and it's a bank card, and I just got a bank account and all that when I got a job at American Friends, so that I could get direct deposit. And so I started to build up, but at first they're like, you gotta get, no, I'm not doing that. Cause they told me no loaning and borrowing. I don't wanna borrow anybody's money. So, once again, you don't know what it is you don't know. And those are the issues that we have when we come out. Answer that question.
I'm actually just gonna piggyback off of everybody because, Mr. Martell, you talked about, I believe, technology in particular. And one of the things I've learned to value since I got out have been the 3 dots.
Yeah.
I have no clue what 3 dots were. I'm like on this site, I'm like, okay, well, where's the help guy? You know, I mean, hello, you know, trying to figure out, how do I get help? I'm beating on the computer, calling for my stepson, get in here, I can't figure this thing out. And somebody's finally told me about the 3 dots. You don't learn about that in prison. Nobody's telling you about the 3 dots. They're afraid that if you learn about the 3 dots, you're gonna get out of prison. It's insane. It's literally insane.
It's an escape charge.
Yeah, it's an escape charge. It's crazy. It's like, what? 3 dots? So 3 dots are your best friend. But again, you're not taught that. Microsoft Word, any of that, you're not taught that. Unfortunately, you know, the Michigan State system hides it from you. I have a good friend of mine who was released from the federal, he did Fed time, then came to the state and was released from the state. He took Microsoft Word. He was like, what? You guys don't get that? I mean, normal, everybody should have that. I'm like,
Yes.
you know, I'm like, well, I don't know how to do the little file it, save it, move it here, shuck and jive it there, and all that good stuff. I didn't know any of that stuff. You know, and it's sad because it's such a security threat, they won't teach you.
Well, they do not allow inmates to have access to the internet.
No, you have
Period.
it's all.
Oh my God, if we
no.
get on the internet, it's going down.
No.
Down, we don't know everything.
Put us on the internet. We're gonna be lost.
Yeah.
The second, Mr. Manville talked about, in particular, were, I believe, jobs in particular. And I just wanna give you guys a dose of reality. In prison, one of the highest paying jobs is, I believe, $2 to $3 a day. A day, for 5 days a week. That's it. Oh, by the way, a ramen noodle, which is the staple of life in there, is actually up to about 60, 70 cents. So you might make a ramen noodle, which you're probably gonna eat almost every day in there because the food stinks, except for so you know, and so the money that you're making isn't enough to sustain you when your release date comes up. You're trying to survive in there. It's terrible. And then the last thing I wanted to point out in particular was job applications. And this goes hand in hand with technology. That's what I was pointing out. It's tough to figure all this stuff out. My wife was so kind to make sure I had my Apple phone, and my stepson helped me figure it out. Without them, I would have been lost. I was damn near ready to throw it against the wall most of the times. But in particular, when it came to jobs, I reached the point where I was like, just give me an application. Give me the thing on paper that I can fill out. I can't understand this whole fill it out online stuff. I don't get it. I keep hitting submit and it won't submit. It's telling me I missed this line. It's telling me I missed that line. Everything's lighting up in red. It was horrible. So all of these things combined that these individuals spoke about are extremely critical and need to be addressed.
So we started a little bit late, so we are a teeny bit short on time, so I'm gonna ask you a brief question and open it up to everybody else who wanted to ask questions. So most of us here, are either just beginning our legal career, or just beginning our law school journey, or just finishing and getting out to the real world. Many of us, if not all of us, are interested in some sort of systemic change. So for these young attorneys, including myself, who want to assist these individuals who are so harshly affected by the justice system, what advice do you have for them?
I mean, it's hard in the legal system. It's like by definition, it's a conservative, reactive institution. So trying to like figure out how to operate in that to advance positive change. It's a really difficult question. I would say anybody who's planning on doing a criminal law, like read Durham versus Missouri and challenge the jury pool process. Email me about that. We all know that if you require a license for voting, like, oh, that's racist, we can't do that. But like our source list in in the state of Michigan is you gotta have a driver's license or a state ID just to get in that pool for each county. So yeah, there's a huge like constitutional issue there that like nobody seems to think about much, but that's one like concrete solid thing. Durham, yeah.
You have to remember that the judicial system is set up to be against defendants. It is not set up, as has been said, and that's up that you're innocent until proven guilty. Basically, the way the court system works and the probation officers and everything, it is guilty until you prove yourself innocent. And the problem is that, you know, that's very difficult. So you have to understand that and understand that you have to, you know, for all the prison cases I've done over the years, I accept 50% of whatever anybody tells me as true. Then I decide whether I can take a case or I ask them additional questions so I get more information. Because if you consider it, we could all look at something out the window and that's of a car accident, and we could all write it down today. In a month from now, we could write it down again, and there's gonna be differences between what you wrote down today and what you wrote down a month from now, 6 months from now or a year. So it is just something that you have to realize, and when you're talking to your client, you are not talking to them the day after the event has happened. You're probably talking to them, you know, a year or two, okay? And that's what happened with a lot of our prison cases. We're like 3, 4, 5 years after the incident happened, and you talk to them, and they don't always have that memories. So you have to push them into getting what supports them. And if you're gonna really represent people, you have to have a caring mannerism about you. In trial and that stuff, is this my client, I'm reaching over, touching him? You have to give the jury the impression that you are not scared of him, that you are not adverse to him, or, okay, they were there for 4 days and she never once, or he never reached out once and that stuff and really talked to the client or anything. You've gotta make it human. So, I'll quit there, I could go on and on, but
That
go
was
ahead.
nice, I like it.
Remember that.
Yes, I got it. So I know that there are a lot of legal stuff to, like, civil, criminal, all that other stuff. I don't do law, I'm business. So, it's a lot of areas in which you could be going into. It could be for money, could be to become a teacher, a judge, a cop, or whatever. Stay true to you. Just stay true to you on your journey. But if it's about the money, make it be about the money, but don't do things that later in life, you're gonna look back like, you wanna have no regrets. You wanna have no regrets. No regrets, none, no regrets. So try to have, you know, and even if your mind says, oh, this is a regret, be like, no, I don't regret that because you were true to you. There you go. That's all I got.
Okay, real quick, like, I have, the only regrets that I have for my 45 years is that a couple of times I did not get correction office.
Yes. I don't got them regrets.
Mr. Manville is 100% right about care. I still actually talk with my attorney that represented me on my appeals. He and I are actually good friends now. I just got pictures of the birdhouse he was working on for his daughter, which was pretty cool, you know. So he literally, like I said, he took my case on pro bono and he put his heart and soul into it. And he told me he does not represent a client he does not believe in, and he puts everything he has into it. The thing I would like to tell you guys, those of you that are actually going to field law, be prepared to get beat down. You're going to get beat down, period. I know that feeling, hey, plenty of times. But appreciate each and every win that you do achieve. And law in itself is critical and it's important, especially because without constitutional law, I wouldn't be sitting here before you. And I want to leave you guys on this note with that question. This is how important it is. It gave me an opportunity to sit here in front of you and talk to you, but it's not always equitable. Miller versus Alabama. The guy who started it all, Evan Miller, got life without parole again. He's sitting in the prison system for the rest of his life because Alabama had a grudge against him and an axe to grind, and they did it through their system. They met all the little minimum requirements and just squeaked right on by to make sure that the guy who started it all off, excuse my language, got screwed in the end.
You ready for the questions?
Especially representing Montreal, do y'all have a phone center for first initial?
Yeah. Really?
Mine was actually pro bono as well. I had 2 attorneys that took my case on because it was such a high profile.
Initially? Oh, well.
My criminal case in prison, I was paying
sure did. Yeah, I had, what is it called, again, state, the appointed, I'm sorry, we just brought, yeah, court appointed, we don't say all that, just appointed, yeah, appointed.
Yeah, back then, we didn't really have public defenders in Michigan. It was appointed lists, or the county would have a contract with a firm that was right there in the county. So we've had a lot of really great work on public defense in Michigan, where we have a lot of really good public defenders offices in different counties. Thanks to the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission. Great work there, incredibly important work, and good jobs too.
If you could wave a wand,
Favorite question.
if you could wave a wand and change one thing about the criminal system, what would you change? Anything, but one thing, wave a wand.
I would change I would wanna change the attitude that exists in the public and society against those who are convicted of anything, especially incarcerated with the combination, so that they could get a fairer, processing of whatever they get. I think that's one of the biggest things, because we talk to jurors after our civil cases all the time, and even though they rule for us, okay, most of them will not give us a lot of money, because they say, oh, they're a prisoner, okay, they don't need the money, stuff like that, and, they think that just because they find them, the prison system or the garden that's liable, that should be, that, he as a inmate should be happy with that.
I think my wand would be waved before the actual legal system. If we could come together as a village, because now we're like a country, and we're no longer a village and all, and we've gotten away from that, which now has the whole village out, committing crimes and all that kind of stuff. If we could catch that before it gets to a crime, then, because once it becomes a crime, it's looked at the way Mr. Manville has said it's looked at. So, yeah, before it even gets to the court system, I would like for it to be cut down. So that's where my wand is at.
Mine's pretty simple. Mine is actually focused on accountability, and it would be essentially for some of the sitting judges. I've read some decisions in particular by a couple judges, Talbot and Redford, which were just, yeah, I heard that, yeah. They're horrendous. They're horrendous, they're contrary to law, contrary to precedent, and they don't care. They essentially supplement their own opinions, thoughts, and beliefs into the system. And it's sad that there's no accountability. There's none. They have blanket immunity. And if I could wave a wand, it would be holding them accountable. Not necessarily removing them, because I can't say that all of their rulings were inappropriate, but I can say that some of them were completely off base, wacky, and personal in nature. So, if that's the case, there needs to be some more, or it needs to be a higher level of accountability on these judges, not just blanket immunity.
I like accountability in a different way though. So I sometimes teach like introductory sociology courses, one of them's on criminal justice, and we're taught about like this criminal justice system, and they have this thing that they call like the 5 theories of punishment, right? And it's deterrence and retribution and rehabilitation, incapacitation, and I don't know, something else out there. But these are all under this umbrella of punishment, right? So this idea of punishment as opposed to just accountability for when somebody does a wrong, and our knee-jerk reaction is like, and our first step on all of this stuff is, the person needs to be punished. But like, I've got 3 dogs, and I don't punish my dogs, because I know like that's not going to do what I want to do. So instead I train them to do the right thing, right? So like this accountability about people who are breaking the law, this idea that we're going to punish out of them the behavior that we don't like, I think is just really misplaced. And just like, just creating more harms also. So probably to go back and rethink like this idea of how we rely on punishment to get back at this person, as opposed to just like a solutions-oriented approach where it's like, how do we get the person to do what we want, to be part of our society, part of our community?
Thank you, and thank you all for coming today.
Thank you guys.
One little point, since it's gonna come down to you guys, I don't wanna take them bags back with me, so make sure y'all grab a couple, take some to your friend, and there's some information in them as well. So,
And we're
get
going
that
to-
stuff.
They're going to reside, the leftover ones, in the diversity